Well, I'm thrilled today to be with the legendary Mr. Paul Dunn. Since 1977, he's been into the accounting profession worldwide, a veteran of what's going on in the world of accounting, numerous books under his belt, thousands and thousands and thousands of accountants attending programs over the years. So Paul, welcome along.
Thank you, Rob. It's great to be here.
Looking forward to some insights of yours when it comes to the whole space of cloud accounting and social accounting, social cloud computing. So the first question I have is, what are you seeing out there in the small to medium enterprise end when it comes to cloud accounting and social platforms for general business?
Well, I mean, the interesting thing I think about this, someone once said that perspective is looking at something from a place where you're not. And so in a sense, because I'm not an accounting firm or whatever, I can have a different perspective. And of course, the great thing about that perspective is that I'm a small business person, right, through and through. And so from my perspective, what I see is more businesses like us, and that is embracing the whole cloud thing, and more importantly, loving it, right, as compared with, if you will, the traditional models. And also understanding that we are now much more connected to things than we ever could be before. So it's how can I say it? It's an easier place for us to be, or for us to be, and it's certainly an easier place for SMEs to be than it ever was before. And it's much more seamless, I think, than ever before.
Okay, so you in your business, B1G1, which is your philanthropic activities these days, are using a cloud accounting system.
Exactly.
And for what we spoke about earlier in the day, your entire business is on the internet.
Exactly.
What impact are you seeing on your business and other businesses that have their technology on the internet versus a hard drive server?
Well, it's very simple. You simply can now do things that you could not do before. You can do them much more seamlessly. You can do them, I think, in a much more secure way. Interestingly enough, I think some people say, "Oh, it's not so secure." I find that to be, wrong thinking. It's just there, and importantly, we're surrounded by it. I mean, this is, the age of speed, where we, for whatever reason, we want access to stuff at any particular point in time. So, for example, isn't it cool that sitting here right now, I could just go bang, and I'd have everything, and I'd have it on my tablet, or I'd have it on my iPhone, or whatever. I mean, this is the world we live in.
And how prevalent do you think this will be in the future when it comes to cloud computing services for general business?
Well, Rob, it's interesting. Someone recently spoke to me about social enterprises, and they said, let's define social enterprises and as distinct from, if you will, normal businesses. And my answer to that question was, I think it's an irrelevant question, because in years to come, there will not be such a thing as a social enterprise, meaning we will all be social enterprises. We'll all understand this whole give back philosophy. And in exactly the same way, I don't think that years to come we'll be discussing this thing called the cloud. It will be, that's how we draw breath, if you will. So we're at this point now where we talk about it as if it's a different thing. But I think that will be like, years from now, can you remember we used to think it was a different thing? Right? Yeah. It's just all pervasive. It's part of the DNA of business. And so, as is being connected. So to me, it's the most natural thing to be doing.
So with these changes afoot, and some of the world software providers, apparently 80% of all software in the last 12 months was written on the internet, not on a hard drive or a disk.
Tells you something, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And that's all changing. How do you think this might affect the way accountants work with their small to medium enterprise clients?
Well, it's fundamental, isn't it? I mean, the profession for a long time has been, how shall I say, blessed by the fact that it doesn't have to get out there, or at least some people would think it doesn't have to get out there and market, because governments have regulations which mean that we have to have the profession. But there's no question in my mind that will be changing. There's no question. I mean, these days, here in Singapore, for example, I can take my iPhone and I can scan it as we can in Australia to get on an aeroplane. I don't need a boarding pass anymore. All of that sort of stuff, and so start with the fact that that's going to be the way business operates, and it's looking for that seamless stuff. So now it's found a better way of doing things. So anybody who was only providing that way of doing things is going to be in a bit of a hole, I suspect. In fact, more than that, I think it's going to be, if you think about the industries that have been impacted, think about bookstores, think about airlines, think about all of those things that have been impacted by this seamless nature now of doing business. You would have to conclude that the profession is one of those industries or things that is going to be impacted. And I think, in fact, I was saying earlier on that I think it's kind of like the frog thing. And as I remember the analogy, you can put a frog into boiling water, and the frog, oh my God, and jumps out of the water. Or you can start the water at a cold temperature and then slowly boil it, and then all of a sudden, the frog kind of dies. And I think where we're at right now is this position where we're not really understanding the significance of what's happening. It's kind of like, okay, well, it's all around us, and that will work out. That's not true. It's not just all around us. It is who we are, and it is who business is, and therefore the profession has to find ways or other things to be doing to add value to the people that it serves, because it's going to be harder and harder and harder for it to add value through those traditional services, because we'll all be doing those in different ways, in different seamless ways. So unless and until the profession understands that and really starts to market that which it can do, then I think those that don't do that are going to be in one hell of a hole, actually.
So, Paul, after 4 decades of working with accounting
Has it been that long? Oh my gosh.
4 decades, you've seen some change. Are you saying that the regular type accountant is like that frog with the water slowly getting heated up?
That's precisely what I'm saying. And Rob, I can remember years ago, I'm not sure whether you were around this time, but I can remember years ago when we were writing software and we said, wouldn't it be great if people were able to do their accounts and put them on a floppy disk? And give it to us. And there were some forward-thinking people who thought, well, that was really cool. But I mean, we've moved on, thank goodness, from that kind of stuff. But what we've moved to, I think, is a way where the word that I use very frequently is this word called connection, right? And the level of connection now that accountants can have, who are doing not the quote-unquote traditional compliance things, but doing more. By doing more, they can have a deep connection and more solid connection, and that's the important thing, to their clients. And unless, I mean, go figure, if they don't have that deep connection, if they don't have that solid connection, then guess what? People are going to go elsewhere, because it is no longer a pain to change accounting firms, right? I mean, years and years and years, it's always been the case that, well, clients are here because it's very challenging for them to change. But I would suggest to you that with, the cloud technology and all the things associated with that, it's no longer the pain that it was. It really isn't. And the moment that governments make it easy for us, and you've got to believe this will come, that governments make it easy for small business to, I mean, already we can go tap, 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 tap and do our returns. But the moment we can integrate that, which has got to come, there's no question about that, then it's a fundamental change the way in which the profession does business. And so all of the things that we've been saying all these years, I think, are now going to come absolutely true, and they're going to come true quicker than we actually think. I mean, who would have thought that we'd now be surfing on our iPhones or whatever? I mean, no one would have thought that. It's crazy. Who would have thought that you can hold this up to a scanner? Who would have thought that you can do your payments this way? Who would have thought all of those sorts of things? I mean, we just would not have thought it. But it's staring us in the face. And I think that's a real call for action, to say, well, hang on, if this stuff is going to be commoditized, I mean, that's really what we're saying, that it's going to be commoditized, then surely to goodness, for us to continue to be relevant, for us not to be a ordinary commodity, then we've got to start adding in a raft of services that are using different skill sets and different sets of expertise to truly connect to our clients, to truly get them or give them that which they want. In other words, get the compliance stuff out of the way, because we're doing that now in different ways. But let's now focus on some real interesting ways of building our business.
So, in relation to that, what can an accounting firm do? You know, there's a change of foot on the way.
Yes.
In relation
Well,
to...
it's here.
It's here. There's currently a small percentage of utilisation.
Yes.
But that's growing every single day.
Dramatically.
As you've said, the government agencies, tax department, etc., once they get their act together, then we're talking about seamless transactions
Yes.
between the business person's device
Yes.
or software thing, application, and the tax department.
Absolutely.
Which means that the core compliance accountant is not as relevant as he or she are today.
Yes.
So with all that in mind, what do you think accountants need to do to step up, to remain relevant, to make a difference right now with all that change of foot?
Well, I mean, you said it. I mean, you said it's make a difference. I don't know anybody, Rob, who's an accountant who got into this profession to do the kind of things that they're actually doing in lots of cases, right? I mean, they all got there or wanted to do things that made an impact with their clients, to make an impact maybe even on their community, all of those sorts of things, right? Not to churn out those things that they churn out. So it's a matter, I think, of saying, okay, now is the time for us to really explore what those things are that allow us to develop our natural skill sets. I don't think that there is any profession in this world other than the accounting profession that can so influence business in a positive way, and that as a result can so influence the community of which that business is a part than the accounting firm. So it's an interesting question, you know, as people are watching this video. I mean, just sort of ask the question, okay, so what impact are we actually having? By the way, I think what's interesting is when you seriously step back and ask that question, you will actually see that it's more than you think. In other words, when you look at it, you're probably providing right now much more value than you actually are charging for, right? That we've known that to be the case for a long, long time. But if you seriously take a look at that and ask that question about what sort of impact are we having, and more importantly, what sort of impact could we have if only we made a commitment to getting these new skill sets, getting these new tools, getting these new resources, and understanding that perhaps the day is gone when we could sort of say back and, well, you know, we're actually going to get so much business this year because the government is mandating that people come to us. I mean, that's not going to happen. It's really not going to happen anymore in the way in which it currently happens. And so that means we need to get a skill set of marketing our services. So first of all, getting the services, getting skilled in those services, and then learning how to market them. That has to be the way forward. And you and I are already seeing people who do that. And what is staggering to me is that when you look at those, I mean, accountants are good at numbers, right? So what's staggering me is when you look at the numbers of the firms that do that, you look here, contrasted with the firms who don't. I mean, it's not an incremental difference. I mean, we are talking a step function difference. And so I think it's more than just the signs are all there. I mean, it's like everything is there. So it's just a matter of really, I'm thinking, Rob, these days that it's more about what goes on inside us and understanding really the value that we can bring. And once we make that step, then I think we are in for a future that is the kind of future that we've been talking about for a long time. But now the technology is there for us to make it real.
Well, Paul Dunn, thank you very much. You've got much more life left in you after 4 decades of helping accounting firms. Looking forward to more insights as we go.
Rob, thank you. It's been a real pleasure.
You're welcome.